Welcome back to Crimson Cast. Galen, Clavio, Scott Caulfield joining you once again. It is Sunday, February 22nd. And Scott, we were going to record this about an hour ago, but we delayed it. Congratulations, Team USA. First gold medal since 1980 as they knock off Canada in 3-on-3 overtime, just as everybody foresaw.
Right.
What a game there. Great way to start the weekend, or at least start the second half of the weekend. But wow, I'm having to mentally reprogram myself now to talk about IU sports, having witnessed that. That was quite something.
Oh, it's like they're champions, we're champions, everyone's champions. It was awesome. No, it was I did win mid game hockey bet, which I can say is the first one of my life. I bet USA was plus 1.5 goals, so I won that. That was fun. Or I'm assuming I did that right. I don't bet a lot of hockey, so maybe I lost. That was great. Here's a question I have for you about the way that went. It's electric. Everybody loves the just straight 20 minutes of, hey, we have a 20-minute game. We're just going to play 20 minutes. Like, you have to sit here and watch it. The people who don't are the advertisers, but you see this in the World Cup sometimes too. I'm surprised more sports haven't just played around with this of, I understand that you need to have commercials. I get that. But everyone knows the rhythm of games. So it's like, oh, there's a timeout. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go do this. Like, a lot of people just don't watch, or they watch late. Like, I've wondered if you just were a sport, it's like, fourth quarter in basketball is just going to be played through, but we'll have an advertising bug in the bottom that says, Gillette, the best a man can get, or like, and you have like just little stuff going on. Like, because I didn't want to leave my TV during that 20 minutes of the third period. I didn't want to leave during overtime. And it's like, you would have seen ads. You'd have more captive eyeballs if there was timeouts. That's when people leave. I'm surprised more professional leagues that have advertising don't think about that.
Oh, I'm sure they think about it. Advertisers hate it. Advertisers don't want to be an insignificant part of the overall visual. They want you to sit there and watch their stupid ass commercials that they.
But everyone at home leaves. Like, that's the time to go do something else.
But some don't, and I think that's the attitude. Look, here's the thing: there are sports that have played around with this. Obviously, you watch Champions League or Premier League or World Cup. It's exactly what you described. Golf, the Masters, has played around with commercial-free. There's a couple of other sports that go in, but it's interesting to me because football would never really work with that because of how much the game has now grown, college level and pro level, around the breaks.
Yeah,
and it's annoying. I know, standing there in Hard Rock Stadium when Indiana won the national title in football earlier this year, and the number of 3-minute timeouts, this became a running joke between me and a couple of people in the stands that were with me for the games. It's like, do you like 3-minute timeouts? Here we go. Another one.
Yeah. And college almost messes with you with the guy coming out with the clock. It's like, nope, here it comes again. Like, there's your time. You got to wait.
But no, there's so many advertisers who are addicted to the inventory that I just don't think you're going to see a scenario where you're able to change it over. I know IndyCar's tried some of it, and they've gone to the side-by-side in certain cases.
But you need viewers, though, too, and that's IndyCar's problem. It's like you're dealing with such like 12 viewers.
Right. Well, and unfortunately, you're now in an era with all sports where you need more money, not less. So it's hard to give your sponsors less airtime and say, oh, by the way, we need more cash.
Yeah.
So, but I like where your head's at, Scott. It's nice.
The other Olympic thought that I've had, this is more half of an idea, is I was watching some of the speed skating, and there was an event I'd not seen before, a like 3-person speed skating like relay, which I had never seen. Then yesterday I'm watching a skiing thing where it's like they're skiing uphill and then they stop and they go on stairs and they ski down, which just seemed to me, that sounds like somebody who's like, hey, I'm really good at running stairs, but I suck at skiing. I think this is an event I can win. But then you think of like the guys who do the ski jump. Right. That's all they can, like, that is their event. It feels like, and this is not a socialist take, it just feels like everybody should have the same number of opportunities to win gold. So like, if you're a downhill skier, you can do downhill slalom, super G, like there's 3 chances. It's like the ski jump guys should have 2 other options. Like, just make something else up. Like, you ski jump over some chairs, or you get to ski jump and then you go down and play, Parcheesi or something. Like, everyone should have the same chance to win as many golds as everybody else.
Interesting. I got to ponder that one a bit.
I mean, it's stupid. It's a dumb idea. It's like the guy who throws shot put. Like, you get to throw shot put, but like Michael Phelps can win 12 golds.
let's continue to workshop this. Is my,
And this is why we don't do an Olympic podcast.
Correct. Yes. This is how to get canceled out of coverage of anything. Is no, it's funny. That's man. Well, congrats again, Team USA, and they overcome another pet peeve we have in sports, which is randomly changing the rules for no reason in overtime. 3-on-3 overtime. Not a fan. Worked out great for the U.S. here, obviously, but could have easily gone the other direction.
Well, the other thing too that happens with these things is, I mean, the NHL has a league, but I saw something, and sorry to kind of step in your world of soccer, which I know you care more about than I do, but I was reading something about how, like, they're trying to use the upcoming World Cup to like really push off the MLS, and sometimes I think people forget, like, the reason this was exciting, the reason you and I watch it is like it's US versus, it's not so much like I want to watch more hockey now. Like I like Olympic US hockey because there's attachment there. And it's that you see this with sports sometimes where it's like, oh, people got really into the World Cup. Like we need a league. It's like, I don't care about like the Evansville soccer team. Like I care about the US in the World Cup. This doesn't translate to me caring more about this sport. It's the US versus somebody else in this sport.
I mean, as someone who already likes hockey, this actually gets me fired up for the playoffs starting in about a month and a half. And look, the thing about it's fascinating to me because hockey obviously has had some trouble latching on in certain parts of the country and probably will continue to do so just because it's not a regionally appropriate sport in some areas, I guess would be what I would say. Like you don't get a huge amount of people playing. It's advanced some in the South, which has been nice, but this is kind of the best of what playoff hockey can be. And that's the nice thing about the NHL, I think, is it is such a great television sport. And with soccer, like the World Cup, there's not a whole lot of spillover because the domestic game and the international game feel fundamentally different in a lot of ways. This is like exactly what you'll get in the NHL playoffs, though.
Yeah. Oh no, I love hockey. When we lived in St. Louis. That's where I've talked about this. Like we lived in St. Louis. We met some people and we started doing the handouts at Blues games. It was cool. You'd hand out like the flags or whatever their in-game giveaway was. And then you could just go get whatever seat you wanted after the end of or middle of the first period. So I went to probably like for 3 years, 20 to 25 Blues games a year. And that's when they had like Mason was their goalie and Tkachuk. I now feel old. It's like we watch Keith Tkachuk a lot. Oh, yeah. And now his kids are winning gold medals. But I stand by, like, I got way into the Blues for 3 years. It's one of those that I kind of forget, like, oh yeah, I do like hockey. And then I start trying to get into it around the playoffs. There's just not enough bandwidth. But no, it's great. And I, like everyone else who's had a dip their toe in the hockey world, I always say, like, it is maybe the best live sport once you understand it and get into it and like go to a couple of games. There's really nothing like it in live sports.
No, it's true. And certainly it's one of those communal crowd experiences. Yeah. To me, there's a lot of similarities in terms of the crowd experience with college football that you'll get with NHL hockey, especially in the playoffs. I mean, there's just an energy there that is hard to duplicate. And it's something I hope everybody gets a chance to actually try out. I mean, it's a shame, like living here in Bloomington, there are no particularly close places to go watch NHL hockey. I mean, they're all about equidistant. Yeah. Chicago, St. Louis, Nashville, Columbus. But
minor league hockey is also fun. I've been to a good number of Fuel games. Like my wife, I mean, they go to a lot of Comets games. Like it's a little bit different, but it's having gone to a G League game this week for the first time. Like minor league hockey is a little more interesting than I found G League basketball to be.
I mean, as a former play-by-play broadcaster for minor league hockey, yeah. I would concur. No, there's no difference. There's no similarities at all between G League basketball and minor league hockey. Just in terms of, you're going to have a level of energy and excitement there that is far greater than what I have experienced with any minor league basketball and some college basketball for that matter.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's go ahead and dive into the show. We've got IU basketball to talk about. We've got IU football to talk about. But first, we're going to talk about Homefield Apparel, your place to go for the finest in college fashions, the softest fabrics, the coolest designs like this delightful Rose Bowl hoodie, which has rapidly become my favorite out of the whole run. A lot of people got the cream one. I ended up going with the red one. I like the choice. I think this was a good choice for me.
I'm betting the over on you getting the cream one in the next 12 months.
Maybe, but every time I've gone to order it, it's been out of stock. And
Well, you got to go to their store on Kirkwood.
Then I am confronted with the real issue that prior to Indiana's run in the college football playoff, I had too many hoodies, period.
Same.
And then I acquired, I think, 4 additional hoodies from the run. I probably at some point need to just admit that I've got a hoodie problem. So yes, but I'm happy to have the hoodie problem when it's Indiana going to the national championship.
Yeah, the solution is auxiliary closet. Like, that's the way to solve it.
I have an auxiliary closet already, Scott. So that's not the solution to the problem. You missed. This was what me and Grace talked about this on the other show, and it's just like I don't. We get to the point where we start to phase things out of our closet, but the stuff that's in the closet is all home field already.
Right.
And so now you're really confronted with issues. But anyway, if you haven't gotten to that point yet, folks, add to your closet. Use the code HOME23. Get 15% off your first order. You can also go to Homefield at Tracks right here in Bloomington and find yourself some delightful apparel from Homefield. If you're ordering online, use the code. You can't use that yet in person, but maybe someday. We'll see. Anyway, Homefield apparel, more great things coming out, and they've got college basketball up and running. They'll have more college basketball apparel coming out soon, including the IU coaching jacket already out, available. Jared Morris said he just got that when I was talking to him after the Purdue game on Friday. So again, go to homefieldapparel.com, proud sponsors of the Back Home Network. Also, just a reminder, we're brought to you by Posh Hotel Bloomington. New dates being released soon for football season.
Yep.
Why not spend a football weekend in the finest luxury accommodations in the city of Bloomington, located right on Kirkwood Avenue, just a couple of blocks from the square. Posh Hotel Bloomington with the finest in luxury accommodations, great amenities throughout, full bar downstairs, infrared sauna, the Curt Cignetti room. What else could one ask for? Go to poshhotelbloomington.com and book your next Bloomington excursion through them. Anyway, Scott, how are we doing?
I'm doing great.
Let's go ahead and dive in. We've got IU basketball to talk about. We're going to save that for a little bit later in the show. Let's talk about IU football first. Some going on with this Indiana team, as one would expect. Not the least of which is Curt Cignetti re-upped earlier this week. They were going to do this as a matter of course, but Curt Cignetti, among the top 3 highest paid coaches in college football per his contract. Scott, this was not a surprise, at least in terms of we knew it was going to happen. It is, however, I would say a surprise that Indiana is paying their head football coach as one of the top 3 highest paid coaches in college football. Not that they shouldn't be, but more just that they are, given everything that we've known about the history of IU football prior to 2 years ago.
I mean, it is a surprise. It also isn't, based on the way this administration has gone the last 18 months. But no, it's 36 months ago, this would have been insane. I've joked with some friends on text. Imagine when they're signing that contract with Dawson, just take yourself back to, 2024. You're coming off a 3-9 season. You are Indiana football. And it's like you're working the contract. It's like, all right, if he wins the national championship, what are the bonuses? Like, I don't know. Like, he gets 25 million shares of NVIDIA and give him Greene County. Like, that, who cares? Like, and like, I don't know, put a 5-year limit on it. Like, that's funny. Like, it's not going to happen in 5 years. Like, Cignetti could have gotten a lot more for winning the national title, throwing that in there. It's a weird spot to be in because, again, 2 years ago, this would have seemed insane if I would have told you, hey, Galen, I think we're going to be paying our coach $13 million a year in the next 24 months. But the way things have happened, we've also done this, 3 times now? Like 3 contract extensions or
right,
2?
Yeah.
But the way that this university has quickly realized, like, okay, we need to take this seriously. We need to put resources to this, and we're not going to go and cheap out, and we're not going to kind of get a little bit nervous with paying. Just be like, yes, no, we're going to do it, and we're going to proactively do some of these. Not this one, but like right after the Penn State game or whenever Penn State fired Franklin, like they just, proactively did that. It's oddly, to me, weirdly to say that it's not surprising that they're doing this. It's not surprising they're paying him, and all money very well spent.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, after a while, the novelty wears off, I think. This is where, again, I feel like Indiana fans observing what Indiana is now doing in football, at some point we'll get used to it all. We have not gotten to that point quite yet. And again, whenever I see a headline saying Curt Cignetti making $13.2 million and Kirby Smart of Georgia is making 13, I will admit.
Who are the two making more? I've not looked it up yet.
Well, I saw a graphic yesterday. It might be Curt Cignetti might be the highest paid coach in college football right now. Like, that is entirely a reality that I don't think we entirely know, because I don't know that we have the absolute full calculations of each coach's description of what they make and for what and how all of it goes in. But it's basically, there's only 3 coaches now making 13 million or more per year. It's Curt Cignetti, Kirby Smart, and Lane Kiffin. And that just happened with him moving over to LSU. Ryan Day is only in the 12 million range. And Lincoln Riley is only in around that range. And so
should we look at them for assistant jobs?
Well, no, because we have Brian Haynes and Mike Shanahan.
I'm kidding. Like, but if they move on, it's like, hey, Brian, hey, Ryan Day, we got a spot. I mean,
it really is, though. It's a new normal sort of thing that it's good for us to get it, I think, our heads wrapped around. But it keeps coming back to this core element of all of this, every aspect of it, that, again, I don't know that we've had a chance to fully conceive of as IU football fans, and especially that overlap of IU football fans who also closely followed college football culturally and as a sport, as an organizational structure over the course of time. It just doesn't. There's not even really a great analog. Maybe the closest would be like if the Cincinnati Reds or the Florida Marlins in 2 years, like, went to where they were, hosting the second or third highest payroll in Major League Baseball. It'd be a similar kind of thing. It's like, you're allowed to do that, but who would have ever envisioned that you're outspending the Red Sox or outspending the Yankees? That's about the closest I can get to that level of how the heck is this happening, because it's the only sport where the pay scales are so extreme and the way the resource allocations are so extreme when it comes to thinking about who spends what. In professional sports, you're all kind of required to spend within a certain band. There is no real requirement for that in college football. And much like in Major League Baseball, like, you can kind of spend as little as you want or as much as you want on your roster. In this case, it's like Indiana is choosing on their own volition to increase their spend on coaches' salaries by such a huge margin. And it's great. And you see, like, tangible results. It's so rare for those two things to happen, to choose to spend that money and for there actually to be results that more than justify it. Like the news about Cignetti's extension on, like, the CFB Reddit or subreddit, where you got fans from other teams, everybody's like, well-deserved, probably should be paid more, not just 13 million a year.
Well, the two things on that. One is not at you. It's like it goes to, like, it's just so hard to comp this, and I'm kind of done trying to comp it. Like, I was listening to an NBA pod, and they were trying to, what's the comp of the Game 7 Halliburton injury? And they kind of came to just like, there maybe Isaiah Thomas in the 89 finals, or 88 finals, but it's kind of like there just isn't a comp. It's over here. It's singular in what it is. And, like, let's try to stop comping it because it kind of diminishes. I feel the same way about Indiana football. Like, I'm done trying to comp this to something else. Like, it is singular in what it is. The other thing that is wild, this goes again to the beyond Scott's fever dream possibilities. You and I used to have this theoretical discussion of, people would say, God, I just hope we don't get good, because if we get good, our coach is going to get poached. What's wild is that I think Cignetti's age plays into this, where he realizes he can't do 5 more stops after this just based on his age. But also, when you and I thought about that thought experiment, never in my wildest dream, like, there was a thought where, like, all right, it would be like the Kevin Wilson build, where you just get better. You have 5 or 6 years, and suddenly maybe you have a breakthrough year to make fun of the marketing terms. And then a team like, Auburn looks up. It's like, hey, he's got 6 years of results. Like, we're going to take that. The idea that it would hyperscale it so fast that it's like other teams don't even have time to, like, catch up and be like, what are we doing here? This idea that we got this good, we almost blew through the time where you could have those 5 or 6 years where other teams can start to kick tires and make moves and things like that. Like it's wild that it happened this fast, that you kind of blew through that point. And then not only that you had a great season, that you had such a good season that you go undefeated, you win the national championship. It's like, yeah, you have to do whatever you have to do. Like all these things conspired to make it where it's unbelievable. But it even in the world where I thought we'd have a coach that was this good, I thought we would have lost him, but that's because I never thought it would take 2 years.
That's so much of what happens in high level sports like this. And college football absolutely counts in this. It's really about who is willing to spend money to make things happen. And that is a psychological mindset that when you think about the way that sports in general has operated, it's always been this dividing line between not just teams, but fan bases. Like if you go back to, I think it was 2002 or 2003, this was back in the middle of the Yankees-Red Sox rivalry when it was still incredibly one-sided. The Yankees had won multiple World Series in the 90s. And, there was that back and forth about who was going to get Alex Rodriguez when he was a free agent. And the Yankees end up outbidding the Red Sox, and George Steinbrenner makes some snide comment in the press about the Yankees being willing to spend to be a true champion. Direct shot at the Red Sox. And then, of course, it all turns around. The Red Sox end up beating the Yankees the next year. And, but prior to that occurring, the idea was, well, the Yankees are willing to spend the money, and that's what makes them champions. And the Red Sox aren't willing to make those kind of investments. And we've heard the same thing talked about with, Penn State. We've heard it talked about with Auburn. We've heard it talked about with other programs, USC, maybe, where, well, what separates them is they're not totally committed institutionally to victory. And I think one of the things about Indiana, it's Indiana hasn't even been in those conversations. It hasn't been, oh, well, if Indiana cared more, they'd spend more money and they would try. It's it wasn't.
We would just put money in a garbage can and burn it. Like that's what people would have thought our money would have gone to.
And the idea that Indiana athletics and that Indiana University would be not just spenders in the college football space, but predators in the IU or in the college football space is it's an insane leap of, in terms of where we have been and what we have known versus where we are now. It is such a personality transplant for an organization, the likes of which I don't know that we've ever really seen in sports. I'm going through and thinking about
no comps.
There's just really, in college football, when you think about the programs that have said, we're really going to get excited and serious about football, it's all been second tier programs. So Clemson, great example. Clemson was on the periphery in the 90s and the 2000s. And there was Clemsoning was a verb that people would use for a team that would get to the precipice and then would fail. And then obviously they poured a ton of resources in. They end up winning a couple of national titles, but it was like a last step for them, not a first.
But they also have the history of having a title team in the 80s and 81 and having that history. I mean, to me, again, I just going against don't comp it, but it's the only one is, Florida State that goes from a, women's college, I think, to a, unaffiliated college, just we're going to become a football school. But that was, better than I mean, that was like a 10-year process. It wasn't within 3 years we're there.
Yeah, I know. And so I'm still just.
And I have a hard time even pretending all right, what school, this is the narrative going out there, all right, who could do the Indiana thing? It's all right, you start looking at the schools, who could go and be in Indiana, even within the Big Ten. It's Purdue. It's well, Purdue's had success. I mean, Purdue's been to a Rose Bowl, same with Northwestern. They've had more success than even Indiana had.
Let me put it this way. We know that money doesn't solve everything. So IU basketball is a great example of this. IU basketball, the money that Indiana athletics spends on IU basketball is significant compared to the rest of college basketball. It is not there. I mean, it's below Duke, it's below North Carolina, it's below Kentucky. It's not below a whole lot of other programs. And the fact that they've thrown money over and over at the basketball program over the last 20 years, and that hasn't resulted in any like real success over a sustained period of time. It hasn't resulted in anything more than a Sweet 16 appearance over the last 20 years. It just highlights how it's not just about committing money and resources. It's also about having the right person. And that's where normally it's like you commit the resources and then you get the right person. And that's, I think, the thing that I have the hardest time getting my head wrapped around with this whole sequence of events is like they hired the right person, and I don't think they even completely knew that they'd hired the right person. And then where I give like Dolson and Pam Whitten and the Board of Trustees credit is they realized they had the right person, and they just kept throwing money at it on the fly. It was like watching, it's like they constructed the plane while it was taking off and getting into the air. And the fact that they have continually raised the ante and are like, this is absolutely worth what we're doing in terms of the athletics spend is, especially when you look at like the revenue numbers, where it's like Indiana is still creeping up in terms of ticket sales for revenue. They had a record-breaking year in terms of revenue off the most recent numbers we have, which is from 2 years ago. And they were still like ninth or 10th out of the 16 public schools in terms of revenue from tickets. Ohio State's still way up there. Michigan's still way up there. Penn State's still way up there. This is just it's such a different approach than what you would normally take in this. And yet it's worked amazingly.
Well,
also amazingly, it's worked. Like you have to put like both modifiers on that.
Well, yes. And I was thinking about, with college basketball, like IU college basketball, like they, you hire Crean and he builds a really good team, and then they start throwing resources at it. I mean, it's not, I'm being a little bit like, making this simple. And then Crean kind of misallocates the resources after things start going humming. That's also what's great here is that Cignetti and the football program seem to know exactly where to allocate those resources. Totally different world, but like with NIL, it seems like he understands what he needs to spend to get the players he wants and to get these guys and to get those guys. To me, the other thing that is so important about all of this is, I don't want to dwell on this too long, but there is a reality. Like there will be a post-Cignetti world for IU football. And I do think this is really important now that everyone is stepping up, that, you had this run through the CFP where people took notice of like, holy crap, IU fans travel. Like this is a fan base that is huge. Everybody's like, I didn't realize the largest living fan base. Like that matters. That gets attention. And I think this gets attention too. It's like, oh, that's a university that, like, if he was the 10th highest paid coach for a couple of years, I could see a world where people look, man, what is IU doing? That's the best coach in the country. You're not paying him like that. Like this does show to everybody moving forward, like, oh, they may be, nouveau rich, but like they are here and they are going to be at this level. And so in that post-Cignetti world, whatever that looks like, you have to look at IU as like, no, that's a real place. Like if you do it right there, you can be in the top 3 of highest paid, if not the highest paid. So I think all of that is important, that it just shows that this administration understands and isn't trying to even, cut corners and little spots here. We'll put you in the top 5. And it's just like, no, like you do it, you get it. And Indiana's for real.
It is. This is where I do think sometimes about what the long-term implications of all of this are in terms of Indiana is trying to build an infrastructure that will last. And this is where I think sometimes we don't fully understand how underscaled Indiana has been and is when it comes to the athletic department's size and the infrastructure that you normally need to pull off what Indiana is pulling off. And so I do wonder, obviously you need resources specifically for football. I am curious to see, as we look at stadium expansion and other things, do you get more people in the mix to work and manage all of this? Because now you're talking about significant potential commercial sponsorships. You're talking about a lot more NIL. You're talking about all of this. You're also talking about just a supreme culture shift that has to be managed. I mean, like you mentioned, all these IU fans coming out of the woodwork, and it's great. But the flip side of it is you've got to now build a way to sustain and add to the amount of people that consider themselves diehard football fans. You've got to service that group. That is for a fan base that obviously I think was thrilled with the football run and is buying tickets in greater numbers. Like, this is a beginning.
Right.
You've gotten to the end point of where you're always wanting to get to as a program, but now you got to build an infrastructure to sustain the fan base that you have built and are still building, because it is still a fan base that is largely oriented towards basketball, even if they've all become football fans. I don't think they know exactly what being football fans means in the traditional sense. And I don't know yet that Indiana, who, let's be honest, like, as much as they've improved the game day experience and the pregame experience, going to Memorial Stadium still kind of feels like going to Memorial Stadium like 3 or 4 years ago when you were scaled 40% down or 50% down from what you are. There's a lot of work that has to be done this offseason, next year, and beyond. I mean, it's one of the reasons why you and I are talking football here on February 22nd. There's got to be a ramp up in the way that Indiana approaches these things, because committing all that money to the coaches, great. Committing all that money to NIL, great. There's got to be more sustainable infrastructure about what happens in the stadium, around the stadium, and during the week with fans, because you've got to figure out a way to ramp up people caring about football at a level that they've never cared about before, because that's what builds, what will sustain this after Curt Cignetti eventually retires, and after – and this is the other thing. It's like, so, you hear Cignetti talk constantly about being tied to the hip with Witten and Dolson, because they have demonstrated a willingness to spend this amount of money, put these resources behind. That's got to continue as well. It's not something where you can be like, well, we're not winning a title this year, so we're going to back those numbers back down. You've got to find a way to make this what Indiana does moving forward.
That's why I did a VIP video a week or two ago. Like, I want them to do whatever. I know you've talked also about like stadium expansion and what you do. I want them to do it with purpose and with a, don't rush into bad ideas. But I also think you should be doing it like immediately. Because if you start, let's say you add a row of suites, or you do like a complete refresh of the concourse or something, like that's not going to be ready for next season. At earliest, it'll be the season after. They're talking about, will there be a football village around there? And like, to me, is like, you got to keep the momentum going immediately. And you've seen in other, cities with professional sports, like sometimes if you miss that momentum window, you can miss it completely and suddenly you're out in the cold. And that's my biggest concern. And again, it does not that things have to but if IU just takes their time or is a little more diligent on this, it's like, I really hope, I kind of am hoping there's some announcement of a stadium expansion, refresh, or something before the start of next season, and that it gets done before the start of the 27-28 season. Because if you wait 3, 4, 5 years, you get to a point where maybe you've missed some of the momentum, and then it's like, oh, you're building things retroactively. Like really, you want to show something new to fans this season, and then really have something really cool to unveil next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing it. It just. And this actually, and we'll move on to our next topic after this, but this is a great example of what I just said. Like, this is, and I've felt this way. I've talked about this on the show. You've talked about it on the show. It all happened so fast.
Right.
It's like, we're still processing it. And yet it's like, hey, you're a football school now. Like this. Right. And so as much as it's been difficult for fans to process all of this, the athletic department, and I know this because I've talked with some of them, it's just like, whoosh. Like, you are scaling now at like 3x or 4x what you were doing before out of necessity.
Well, also the timelines are like, we're used to not doing anything right now. Like, we're used to basketball's over. We got 3. I'm at a vacation schedule. Like, I'm not planning stadium upgrades.
Yeah. I mean, it's
with spring ball. We got to do something with spring ball.
So much of this is just out of nowhere. And I think as much as everybody would like Indiana to be up and at 'em at the top level of, behaving like a major football program, it's going to take some time to scale up. This isn't something that administratively or organizationally you can just do. Right. And I think for fans, the best we can do, and as podcasters, I guess, sitting in the middle of all of this, in terms of how we talk about the game, it's like, this is why you have to keep talking about the game. This is why talking about rosters. It's why talking about facilities. It's why all of these things matter. I mean, it was like we did a little segment on the midweek show where I was asking Grace, who has only been to one game in person since Cignetti got here, like, how do you fix the in-stadium experience? And a lot of people were like, yes, those are the things to focus on, not the luxury seats, but like upgrade what it feels like in the stadium with better sound system, and get banners or something up that commemorates what you just had happen with this national championship and with these bowl wins. There's just so many little things that you can do while you're building the bigger things behind the scenes. And yeah, look, there's going to have to be some luxury expansion or some better ways to monetize the stadium, maybe even a little bit of a seat upgrade, I don't know, but those things take time. Like, you can't just you don't snap your fingers and have a contractor come out. This isn't the Super Mario Brothers movie where we just call Mario and Luigi and they come fix things immediately.
Great wild comp.
There's a need to plan these things, because you don't want to do the wrong thing, but you now have to do things with the idea that you're in a different echelon now, whether you asked for it or not. We asked for it. It's here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and again, this is where that win against Miami is just it is such a different echelon to have won a title. And I'm just taking a moment to, everyone needs to reflect and bask in that. Like, you're now a title winning team. And it's wild. Like, when you talk about the highest paid coaches like Kirby Smart, Cignetti, Lane Kiffin, it's like, all right, one of those three is not like the other. Like, somebody doesn't have a title, and a title, really, it puts you in a different phylum of college football programs. And Oregon has done this organically over time. They don't have a title. Like, they haven't been able to do that. Indiana does, and that carries so much weight. And so the idea of, oh, we're a football school now, would still kind of be a joke if we had lost to not a joke, but like, we lost Miami. It's like, all right, well, you kind of are, but you haven't done there. Like, I look at, and we'll save basketball for later, but I look at Purdue. It's like, we still are going to make fun of Purdue. And like, they went to a Final Four. Like, they went to a final game. They got as close as you could get without winning a title. And it's still kind of like, well, Purdue hasn't won. like, that doesn't go away until you completely cash it in.
Right.
And we did. And now, like, that changes the paradigm anyway.
One last thing we want to talk about. Several of you have asked about this, but the Lewis Moore situation popped back up in an odd way, a very NCAA way.
Right.
So let me just give you the cliff notes of what's going on here. So the NCAA is a petty, vindictive organization. And what was, more evidence was not needed to demonstrate that or solidify that, but they're back with more. So there were some court filings that occurred here recently where the NCAA lost some eligibility lawsuits over the course of this past couple of years. You've probably seen some of these rulings. Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, probably the best example of these types of losses that the NCAA has suffered. And the Pavia case largely centered around the idea that the NCAA has had this argument that you get X number of years for 4 years of eligibility inside the NCAA. But they've also extended that to junior colleges, which are notably not run by the NCAA. Right. So, the reason Pavia got an injunction and was able to play this year for Vanderbilt was that the courts ruled that the NCAA eligibility rules can't just apply arbitrarily to another league. Lewis Moore was kind of in a similar boat. He started at a junior college. He was there for 3 years. One of those years was an injury redshirt year, but one of them was a COVID year. And the COVID year in the NCAA's world didn't count against NCAA eligibility. That's why you had some guys who were on rosters for 6 years. And I think we're finally done with all of the COVID eligibility people on the Indiana roster and on rosters elsewhere. Because if you were an active athlete in the 2019-2020 or maybe it was the 2020-21 season, you were basically granted a free year of eligibility. Well, Lewis Moore had won an injunction back in September. You all remember that, where a judge said that, yes, we're going to allow you to play because you're likely to win a case if it comes to trial. And so that allowed Lewis Moore to play the rest of the season. Indiana wins the national title. There were eligibility lawsuits, and then, Moore essentially stopped the lawsuit because the eligibility aspect was over. The NCAA wants it to continue, as they wanted to continue in the case of players that played for Memphis and I believe San Diego State this year, because the NCAA, if they happen to win the arguments as far as the injunctions were concerned on appeal, wants to be able to, they claim, potentially use what's called the rule of restitution, which would allow them to retroactively declare people ineligible and then potentially strip championships or postseason appearances or whatever, or wins or vacate wins from teams that used players that had been playing on injunctions, even when the NCAA supposedly asked those teams not to play players that were eligible on injunctions. So this got some consternation, understandably so, from IU fans. I'm not worried about this at all, Scott, as this seems like a real long stretch, and it seems like more of a move by the NCAA to try and get other athletes to keep from filing injunctions to try to keep them eligible. But still, it was some unwelcome chatter across college football's news landscape, and it just highlights like how messy everything is right now, but also how vindictive the NCAA can get when things don't go their way in court.
Yeah, no, and it's my first thought when I saw this is like, well, first off, like, great. Like, I still went to the Rose Bowl. Like, I still went to the National Championship. I still have the sweatshirts. Homefield's still going to sell. Like, you can do whatever you want. But also, it's like, okay, now that Indiana wins, now this matters. Like, are we going to look at the kid from Alabama who's playing in the G League and then going back to the NCAA? Are we going to do that? Like, any thoughts on Bill Self? Is he still under FBI investigation? I'm not sure. Like, it is funny that it's like when the right teams or the blue blood teams win stuff, it's like, we're good. Like, Michigan has an entire cheating scandal or something going on, and it's like they win, and it's like, oh man, but it's nice to have Michigan back, isn't it? We'll just let that slide. Indiana wins, and suddenly it's like, we need to look at an injunction we already looked at and already ruled on. Whatever, man. It's nonsense. Go nuts, NCAA. By the way, they can rule whatever they want. It feels like these schools have kind of just been like, okay, that's great. Like, that's a ruling that we're not going to pay attention to.
Yes, increasingly, and understandably so. I mean, the NCAA trying to actually pull back, Indiana's, well, they don't even run the national title, as I often say.
So it'd be like a 3-0 national champion.
Well, but they do have the ability to, they can retroactively declare people ineligible because they are the ones that meter that out, because that's not a CFP thing. That said, I don't think that's happening.
Yeah.
And even if it was one of those situations where it was plausible that it could even reach that point, that would probably hasten the end of the NCAA as a body that has anything to do with high-level college athletics, because at some point everybody looks around and says, there's got to be a better way to meter this stuff out than having the NCAA continually lose in court and then try to go in and fix things after the fact to their satisfaction. Like, it just doesn't seem likely. Also, when you consider that, like, the NCAA is essentially its headquarters are sitting on land that the state of Indiana has more or less gifted the NCAA over the course of the last 20 plus years. All of it seems exceedingly unlikely, but this is how far down their own rabbit hole the NCAA has gotten with a lot of this stuff.
I just love your idea. Like, that would end the NCAA. Like, what a fever dream. Like, hey, in 3 years, Indiana's going to win the national title, go undefeated, and also end the NCAA. Like, we take it all down. Yeah. Before we wrap up this one, can I give you my rebuttal to some CFP thoughts that you had?
If you insist, yes.
I must insist. This is so I know you're going to probably like push back on this, which is fine. But you had your thoughts on what the expanded playoffs would look like with, I think, 24 teams, and some of your thoughts on it. And here's the thing. I fully understand that's where we're going. I'm not trying to argue that, but I have listened to an entire week of arguments of, NBA tanking and this and that. Like, everyone's like, you got to shorten the NBA season, which I agree with, but it's not going to happen. It just isn't fundamentally going to happen. So I'm going to bring up something that I understand is fundamentally not going to happen, but I do just want to bring this up and I'm going to be a little old man on the lawn. I hate being suddenly the old guy in the discussion here, because I like progress. I like to change. And I will fully admit, when they go to a 24-team playoff, I'm going to love it. I'm going to watch it, and the numbers will be great. But two things are bouncing around in my head. I've been listening to some discussion on the Chuck Klosterman book, his football book, which I haven't read yet. But one of his, I've heard him on podcasts talk about it. One of his things is that, all the sports that are popular now, not all of them will be popular in 50 or 75 years. Like, things change. I just finished the 1929 book by Andrew Ross Sorkin about the stock market crash. And same thing. It's like hubris, thinking that like what's top now is never going to change, gets people into issues. And I wonder, as college football continues to kind of just become the NFL-lite, where they're creating, when you talk about these larger conferences, people are like, oh, they should make them into 4 different divisions. It's like, that's what the pro football does. And if you make a larger playoff, a 2014 playoff, it comes very similar to what the NFL does. I just wonder, and I could be vastly wrong here, but if you just trying to make a perfect model to crown a champion, I understand it, but you're also losing some of what made college football unique, in that it was, and I'm not arguing for the regular season here. I'm just saying that it used to be, you had regional types of play. You had a kind of a funky bowl system. It wasn't perfect, but it was different than the NFL. And if you just have a system, the way the play is done and all of this, and it is very similar to the NFL, I do wonder if, 50, 70 years from now, you look up and it's like, man, it's just, you're still going to have people liking it because of the connection to their college and the fan bases, but it just becomes a worse version of the same sport. Like, even NCAA basketball, the way they crown a champion is vastly different with the NCAA tournament. And I would say it doesn't always reward the best teams, but it's a really interesting way of doing it. I'm not advocating that we go back to just bowls and voting, but there was something kind of different about that. It's like, that's different, that's unique. And does it have to be perfect? Like, do we have to find the perfect way to find a champion? Maybe we lean into our uniqueness. It feels like they're leaning out of their uniqueness and becoming a very homogenized version of the NFL, just at lower quality play.
I mean, so your answer is to keep a bad system in place because it makes us feel warm and fuzzy inside?
I mean, I guess my counter would be like, does everything have to be the perfect system? Are we trying, like, you saw it in Hollywood, where it's like you just keep making sequels and reboots, and like,
I mean,
do you want just the perfect of everything?
Yeah, I do. Well, I mean, college football isn't less popular to the NFL because it has a less perfect system. It's less popular because it's essentially a transition point that happens to have a cultural touchstone that a lot of people enjoy, which is, I'm rooting for a school that I went to or something that was important in my region. The idea that we shouldn't crown a champion because a different version of the same sport crowns a champion through a playoff, like the idea that we'd rather just have a bunch of writers sitting around and making decisions for us, doesn't seem like a particularly good system to me. And I think the Klosterman book and all of these, a lot of the cautionary elements around college football, I think they're largely from people who got used to a certain era of college football that did things a certain way. And it was very unique to that generation. Like, I hear this all the time, especially with Gen X people. They got used to what we grew up with in the 80s and 90s, and they just decided that was the best way of doing things. Well, guess what? That was fundamentally different than how things were done in the 50s and 60s. And, the baby boomers got used to that. They were convinced that was the case. I think these things generationally change. And so, I don't know. I don't look at it as a chase of perfection ruining college football. I think college football is evolving. And I think the idea that college football was in any way, shape, or form like well set up, or that the postseason was well considered, it wasn't. It was a thrown together mishmash of things that happened to have some iconic elements in them. I think we just make a big mistake in mistaking that was the reason why college football was popular. Like, we've gone to this new system, and it's more popular than ever, according to the numbers. It's just that some people who are convinced that the way that it was when they liked it the most is the best, that are complaining about the system and claiming that it's failing. But what we're seeing is that the game has never been more popular than it is over the course of the last couple of years. I'm having a hard time seeing where the problem is right now.
I think that's the point that I'm making, is that there's the short-term hubris of, like, right now it's the best it's been 2 years in. And I'm also not I'm in a weird spot. I don't think it was great before. I just think you're losing some of what made it different. And I don't know. And this is kind of a half full thought. because I don't fully, as I argue it, I end up losing my own steam throughout it. But I do think that idea of like, well, it was really popular for 2 years. Like, yeah, if you change things, like if you turn the NBA into just a single elimination tournament, I bet people would go nuts over it for the first couple of years. Would that last? I don't know. Again, I wonder if you're inadvertently losing some of what made college football unique. And
but what
maybe what made college football popular wasn't the uniqueness.
What did you lose? Limiting access to the title to only a few teams? Is that what we lost? Like, give me specifics. What did we lose?
Well, you lost a different way of getting a champion than the NFL does.
A bunch of writers sitting around and deciding for us.
I'm not saying that was the right way, but I'm also wondering, is just really replicating what the NFL does, is that the right way? Like, is there a way maybe you play the bowl season like you did in the 90s, and then after that you have the top 4 teams of those bowls and they play a 4-team playoff or something? Like, maybe there's a hybrid. Again, I'm not sure this is the right answer. It's just more of I think it's interesting that you could have a world in 5 or 10 years where college football fundamentally looks almost identical to the NFL from a structure point of view, with large conferences playing divisions, and then you play a tournament very similar to the NFL. And I just wonder, do you get to a point where it's like, this is exactly the same as the NFL? It's lower quality. Like that. I hear that a lot with college basketball. Like, the games are different, but it's like college basketball has a different rhythm and a different setup than the NBA. I wouldn't like it if college basketball, you couldn't fundamentally go to 7-game series in college basketball. I wouldn't like it if, you had 7-game series instead of March Madness. I like that it's a different way of crowning a champion.
Okay. I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't understand. Like, we had the 14 playoff for 10 years that you're talking about. We had a 2-team playoff.
Well, this will be a 14 after all the bowls are played.
Well, okay. I mean, okay. I'll take your argument and I'll consider it. But
I'm not saying it's right. And in the end, I'm going to like the larger team playoff. I do agree you need more access for teams. It's a better way to crown a champion. Like, there's no argument there. And I'll stop with this. The people who are complaining about how things are right now, I don't know what you're complaining about. Are you complaining about the playoff being 12 teams? Why? It's been great drama. It's been much better drama than we had when it was 4 teams. It's certainly much better drama than it was when it was a bunch of disassociated bowls. So if that's not what you're complaining about, are you complaining about more teams having access to get into a postseason? I'm struggling to see where that's a problem if the idea is we want the sport to be more popular. So, and this is where I'm not complaining about any of those things, because I like all those. I'm just, the thought is, if your leagues and your playoff is basically the same as another higher level league in that same sport, are you just fundamentally creating a sport that's just the same with less talent? And like, will that affect popularity over time?
But they aren't competing with each other like in a meaningful way. They're different levels of the same sport. I don't think anybody's disputing that. So it's like, shouldn't there be more alignment, not less?
So that's the question. I don't know. Like, I just wonder if,
the idea. Here's the thing:
if they're replicated, and then it's like, this is just it's the same type of football with less quality talent.
But this is where
that's going to cause a problem in like 50 years. I'm not talking next year.
This is where the people that make those arguments, to me, the arguments don't stand up, because if the argument is the college football will be viewed as an inferior version of football to the NFL, it already is. It already is, and it has been for years. Like, that's not new.
But it had differentiators the NFL doesn't.
But it still does. It's younger players. It's a different style of play. It's more teams. It's far more.
The play is becoming more homogenized.
I don't agree.
Okay.
I don't know how you could watch this past year, and argue that play has become more homogenized in college football. Like, there are vastly different styles of play, far more than the NFL. And
I agree with that.
And there's far greater player movement, which leads to different types of play being utilized. You'd have to lay out for me on video how somehow college football has become homogenized. To me, homogenized was college football before, when the only teams that could compete for conference titles were the same 2 or 3. Were the only teams that could compete for national titles the same 2 or 3. That's homogenized, not what we have right now, where you can have an Indiana make it to the championship game and win, or you can have a Texas Tech win the Big 12 and get a bye. Like homogenized.
I agree with that. I'm saying the play style feels like there's way more like RPO. Like a lot of teams are playing the same type of style. You're seeing different teams come in.
I mean,
I could be wrong on that too.
I mean, I watched a ton of college football. I do not view college football as being very similar internally. Yes, you've got amongst the top teams, RPO has been something that has been used by some of them, but certainly not all of them. I mean, Miami and Indiana played, I thought, very different styles of offense and different styles of defense. There's a lot of those things across the board. I think that there's still a lot of individual. I'm not seeing the homogenization of the game. And even if there was, a playoff's a great way to create differentiators, far more so than a bowl system would be, when you have no control over who plays who.
Yeah. Again, a thought experiment. I would say I'm not arguing, and a lot of I don't agree with a lot of the sides of which I'm standing on. I don't agree that it's bad. I want more access. Like, I do like the playoff. I'm just kind of, it's a thought experiment. Wonder. I think where I think this could change to end this out is, because it's so new, it's going to need some moments like, college basketball got the Final Four, which is something unique to college basketball. And you have like the first round, the Sweet 16, things that's like, oh, this is college basketball. It isn't pro basketball. Like they have a different way of doing it. I think over time it's going to be good to see college football come up with like, what is their, you can't have a Final Four, but like, what do they have where you have something kind of interesting to go for and to play for, and that's what. And again, I do think the bowl system was stupid. It's not a good way to pick a champion, but when you lose the Rose Bowl, you lose that bowl system. That's what made college football unique. Having something else to put in there, I think is going to be something important for college football to look at over the next couple of years.
But again, it's like, I don't think anybody would be like, oh, college football has a national championship game. The NFL has a Super Bowl. Ergo, I won't watch college football because it's not distinct enough from the NFL.
No, I'm not saying that, but like for all the fans who went to the Rose Bowl, like that was a very special. That was more special for a lot of people that I've talked to than like the Peach Bowl. Like to take the game out of it, like it was like going to the Rose Bowl. Like that was something. It's like, dude, this is something special. That wasn't just a quarterfinal game. It was the Rose Bowl. Like it was something unique that mattered to a lot of people. Myself, I went and like that was one of the best experiences of all the games that I went to. It was inherently a less valuable game in the playoff than the Peach Bowl, but the Rose Bowl was the Rose Bowl. There's a parade. There's all the stuff that goes with it. I could be totally wrong. Maybe people don't give a shit about any of that, but it felt like people did care about the Rose Bowl. And so when you lose that, does that matter? I guess that's my question. I'm not arguing that they shouldn't make these changes. I just think like, is that going to matter that you lose the fabric of, the Rose Bowl and the experience? And maybe they'll find a way to jam it in like they've done. But I know like that's the one that I would go to, is like, that was important. And then you're already losing like the Peach Bowl, Sugar Bowl, like those don't have the same feel, I think, anymore. I just wonder, is that going to matter?
Did they ever?
That's a great point. Don't know, because we haven't played in that. We haven't played in that world. I don't know, but I know the Rose Bowl did.
Yeah, but I mean, I would argue it would have been just as special to go out and play a playoff game in the Rose Bowl stadium on New Year's Day, like having the name. I mean, it wasn't the ending of the year experience that the Rose Bowl used to be. It was just a game played in the Rose Bowl stadium that they called the Rose Bowl. That was in essence just a quarterfinal game in the college football playoff. And it was still as special as you just described it as
because there was 100 years of it being different and special. So if you go 50 years of it just being a quarterfinal game, does it still have legacy?
Because it was historically it's just been one of many bowls that's been played. I don't like it's certainly in the best location. And yes, shockingly, being outside in Pasadena for a football game will feel more special than being inside a domed stadium in Atlanta.
Except for the year we play where it's raining, but yes.
Well, but Yeah, but my point is, I just don't know if the experience is it tied to the name, or is it tied to being in that stadium at that time? And look, none of these items are 40 years ago. The Peach Bowl was not a major bowl. Indiana played in it.
Right.
Indiana played in the Peach Bowl in '87. No one was thinking, oh, well, this is insanely special. We grew the Peach Bowl into something that mattered. So I don't know. Again, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. I feel like we fall in love with things that are important in our formative years, and then we are convinced that's the best way. Like all of these complaints, and I throw Klosterman right in the middle of the mix with this, sound like people complaining that things aren't the way they used to be, which is a tale as old as time in sports. And I'm not nearly as concerned about the future of college football. The things that need to be addressed in college football to me are the things that the NCAA and its schools could be addressing right now, about how the transfer portal operates, about how, revenue sharing and NIL works. And there's measures that they could take to fix those things that would help to keep college football from becoming just a light version of the professional game, but they refuse to do so because it requires them to acknowledge the model that they actually have been playing under for years, which relied on a bunch of things that are illegal to do.
Well, and I'll defend
bigger issue.
Defend us old timers that, the idea that, if you assume the top 4 sports are NFL, college football, college basketball, NBA, and baseball, we'll take those 5. The idea that whatever order you put them in, NFL number 1, that order and those 5 are going to be the same in 75 years. That's also a fallacy people get into today. And so I'm just kind of playing in that space. 1 or 2 of those sports is going to falter. Something else is going to come up. And the reasons why it falters, we're not going to fully know until retrospectively looking at it. But the idea that, hey, everything's going great and it's going to continue to be great, and like this is always going to be popular, that's also a wrong opinion. So I was playing in that space of like, well, what would be the reasons if college football is the one to fall down? Could this be the reason? And possibly not.
I mean, I'll say this: there are some existential threats to college football, and from the standpoint of how
I think there's more existential threats for other sports. Let me be fair. Like I think NBA, baseball have bigger problems than college football. So this is probably a nothing burger.
No. I mean, I'll say I do think there are issues, but it's because nobody's running college football.
Right.
And the problem that I think the playoff, I guess, if I was going to make a final argument here, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. I don't think the playoff format is a problem. And I even think expansion, like the fact that the NCAA, it's hard for me to say, oh, we're losing what's special about it when FCS has had a 2014 playoff now for several years, and that was never considered a problem. Like, to me, the people complaining about the playoff are the people who want to limit access to certain programs and only want the brands that they're comfortable with being there. There are other issues that need to be addressed in college football specifically that do worry me. And sadly, we don't have people in place to actually address those things. And that really is a problem. So anyway, we'll settle this down the road with more talk, but we're going to take a quick break, come back, talk IU basketball. Stick with us here right on the other side on the Back Home Network.
When the final buzzer sounds in Bloomington, the conversation starts here. The assembly call is IU basketball. Live post-game shows, smart midweek breakdowns, and no empty hot takes. Jared Morris, Coach Brian Tonsoni, Andy Bottoms, and Ryan Phillips dissect lineups, sets, and recruiting so you know what really happened and what it means for the Big Ten season, March, and beyond. Join the live chat on YouTube, then catch the podcast on Spotify and Apple. Just search Assembly Call and be part of Hoosier Nation's most trusted post-game tradition.
Welcome back to What Are You Laughing At, Scott?
Yeah, just going to do an inside baseball talk real quick, just on that promo, if anybody listened to it. And you brought this up to me when we made it. For people who you and I make fun of commentators all the time, just the line that I kept in there, there's no empty hot takes, which implies that there's tons of empty hot takes on every other podcast. So Let's go with tons of empty hot takes here on IU basketball.
I mean, that's what we do best, right? We're hot taking IU basketball. So anyway, yeah. Indiana had a rough week in basketball. They lose to Illinois, and then they follow that up, unfortunately, by losing pretty badly. Not just pretty badly, Scott, to Purdue. The worst loss for Indiana in the series since before the moon landing occurred. 1969, Purdue beat Indiana by, I forget what the margin was. It was ridiculous, but that was the previous.
The good thing is Neil Armstrong was ineligible, so we're the moon landing is under NCAA review. So
yes, the rare off-planet ineligibility.
He had used his eligibility other planets. Yeah,
yeah, it's like that joke about the in Apollo 13 about one of the astronauts not having filed their taxes.
Right. And we'll get an injunction on that. Yeah.
But anyway, no,
definitely out of the country.
We didn't get a chance to talk about this because the game was on Friday, but I wanted to get your impressions first and foremost on the game that Indiana played in Mackey, where they lose by 29 points, their biggest margin of loss in the series since 1969.
Yeah, I mean, the two thoughts, and this is not, super, it's not empty hot takey, is just, I've been saying for a while, outside of the Minnesota road game and the Purdue home game, if you're ranked in 40 or higher in KenPom, Indiana's going to beat you. If you're ranked in the top 40 of KenPom, Indiana's going to lose. And it just seems to be that's the way the season has gone. I guess Wisconsin's 33, so maybe I need to adjust those numbers a little bit. But the point stands. If you're a top 25 team, this team struggles to play. And if you're not, they can beat them, which is great. I mean, we've seen a lot of teams that have higher highs and can't seem to figure out the floor. For a team that over 7 or 8 years, we've had trouble with what's the floor of this team. On a positive side, you're not going to see it this week, but it does seem like DeVries has secured the floor of this team. We're not losing at home to, Wisconsin or Oregon. We're not having, horrible road losses outside of that one Minnesota game. The floor has been secured. We just got to work on the ceiling right now. And, in this game in particular, it's too bad because Indiana played really well defensively to start the game. You're holding Purdue to a couple of, 10 points in the first 5 minutes. The trouble is Indiana for those first 5 minutes had 3 points. One made shot, and then I think they got to 6 at the 15-minute mark. That's not going to do it. Oh, by the way, they got to 10 points at the 10-minute mark. Scoring 10 points in 10 minutes, averaging a point per minute is not going to get you a win. The other trouble, too, it wasn't even just a lot of shots. It was like that was on, I think, 4 baskets, like 2 threes and a free throw, or two twos, like just their inability to score to start the game. You saw this against Louisville. You saw it against Purdue. Like you just can't score 10 points in the first 10 minutes of a game and expect to win at Purdue. They had a good defensive effort, and then Purdue just grinded Indiana to dust, and they did to us what our football team has been doing to teams all season, where they just kind of put the pressure on, pinched it out, and just kept going and going. And, this Indiana team is flawed. That just is. And I'm going to say flawed. They have a hard time competing against the top tier teams in the nation. And, I'll end on this, it sucks. The score isn't awesome, but, we can joke all we want. I think Purdue's missing some of the top tier talent. Purdue's still a really good freaking team. And that's a game on the road. That's a really tough game for an Indiana team that has really, outside of that one win against Purdue, shown an inability to really be able to compete against the top tier teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on all of that. And, I went on assembly call after the game and we talked through it. I did not expect Indiana to win either the Illinois game or the Purdue game. I thought they had a shot against Illinois, potentially. I thought Purdue was going to be tough. But what bothered me about both games, and where I am starting to become concerned about the direction that this season has gone under Darian DeVries, is to be that uncompetitive in a game, a rivalry game, a game at Mackey Arena, where you've got a lot to play for. Like Indiana's spot in the tournament is not necessarily secured, as much as we've talked about how there's a bunch of bad teams below them. Like the reality is they are not that far off of like the first 4. Yeah. And there may be a couple of teams difference right now. and they are not in a great spot when it comes to the way that they're trending against competition that is halfway decent. Like they're quad 1 games, they're 2-10 in those games so far this season. They're not playing good defense just in general, and they haven't for a while. The effort is what concerns me. And the fact that you give up 12-2 runs in the second half to Purdue, and that you go from a game that had gotten somewhat out of hand, but you could have competed and gotten yourself back to at least like a 10-point margin, you instead let it effectively be a 30-point loss. The one thing you had going for you in the absence of wins against top teams was that you had good metrics, and you've done a lot of damage to those. And then you watch the way that this team plays, and it's like they get so easily thrown off of their game when they play a team that is athletic and talented and takes the game to them. I expect more out of Indiana, and I expect more out of look, Purdue's going to hit shots. Purdue's one of the best and most efficient offenses in the country, but you've got to offer resistance defensively, and Indiana did not do that. And that is becoming a concerning trend for Indiana, and this is the exact wrong time of season for that to be taking place. And so I worry about it. Putting aside the quality of opponent, it's your rival. And you're playing at a time when you desperately need to showcase that you can play well to the committee. Like Illinois went into UCLA and lost last night. UCLA did not play a perfect game. UCLA let Illinois have a 20-0 run in the first half, and it looked like the game would be over. Guess what? UCLA kept fighting. UCLA got back in the game. UCLA won that game in overtime. And yes, that game was at home, and the Indiana game was at Mackey, but show some fight in this. Like, this is, to me, if you're missing pieces, if you're not at a highest level of capacities you could be talent-wise, the effort level has to be the equalizer. And I was just really disappointed in how Indiana just seemed totally fine with the game getting away from them the way that they did.
You have no right to be disappointed. No, I'm just kidding. I'll disagree slightly, then agree with you. I also was thinking about this. It is just a really bad schedule breakdown where you basically have 2 games in 2 weeks, and it's at Illinois and at Purdue, which are 2 of the top 3 or 2 of the top 4 teams in the Big Ten, both tough environments, 1A rival. So really again, a team that we've all kind of seen has a really hard time playing these top 10 level teams. To just have this as the only 2 metrics for 2 weeks, and I have one more game sprinkled in there where it's like, well, at least they righted the ship against Maryland in there somewhere. It's like, just, this is all you have to go off of. I would say I'm still not as concerned because I went in assuming they were going to lose, and they kind of let the plot get away from them in the Purdue game. But I wasn't expecting them to win, so I'm okay with it. Where I will agree with you is what I am seeing something on offense that is starting to concern me as well. And you see this more in the other games, like the games against Oregon and Wisconsin, is there are a lot of times where Indiana is struggling to score, especially in this Purdue game. And I know the teams are playing defense, but you see a lot of times like DeVries, Tucker DeVries will drive in and have a shot, kind of not, and then just like pump fake and then pass it back out. And you're seeing a lot of kind of half drives started and not completed. And it's not like, there's a defender there, but sometimes it's like, hey man, especially in that Purdue game, I'm like, you guys have taken 3 shots in 8 minutes. Like, at some point you scored 6 points in 10 minutes. At some point, a bad pull-up is better than just a pump fake and kicking it back out and then giving no one a shot. And I'm starting to see this a little more in our offense where we drive the ball, the defense stops the drive, and that just ends it right there. It's like, just go up and go into contact, be a little more aggressive. And I would say that's something that I'm seeing that is concerning me, because it does seem like our defense is able to be gamey. Our defense has gotten better. It's fouling less. It's doing a better job, but it cannot keep up with these swoons in, even that in the Purdue game. It's like the game didn't start on a run because IU was playing good. It was, 15-10. But it's like, you held Purdue to 15 points in 10 minutes. You can't have 10 points.
Yeah. I mean, the problem on the defensive front is I don't think it's getting better. It's gotten worse. And a lot of that, as we talked about on Assembly Call, is that Indiana is just not forcing turnovers. they are not making it hard on their opponents to have possessions that end in anything other than a shot. The last 4 games, Indiana's only forced turnovers on 10%, 9%, 3.5%, and 11% of opponent possessions. That's real bad that you would let that happen. And Indiana allowed Purdue to shoot an effective field goal percentage of 74.5% in that game. I mean, that's real bad. Yeah. And look, maybe there is a route towards which this is just a swoon caused by playing 2 really good opponents back to back on the road. We won't know until Tuesday night when Indiana takes on Northwestern if this is a more permanent hangover or it's something they can bounce back from quickly. But you look at the game by game numbers in terms of what Indiana has allowed defensively, like it was already not great even when they won 5 out of 6. It's gotten real bad here over the course of the last 5 games. And that could be a number of things. And offensively, you mentioned, if you look at Indiana and the way that they've played against top 50 opponents so far this season, Tucker DeVries is not playing particularly well offensively. His offensive rating is 102. Lamar Wilkerson has struggled against that level of opponent as well. His offensive rating is only at 106. Like the guys, weirdly, who have carried Indiana in terms of offensive production against top teams, Sam Alexis and Reed Bailey, but both of them are so inconsistent that you can't really count on them for those things. And so I look at what Indiana.
Well, and can I hop in real quick?
Please, yes.
What I do think where I am concerned is what this team has now done, back to your point on the tournament, is, as we sat in the middle of January and we were, 5-5, it wasn't concerned. We were less concerned because, hey, I see a path to 10-10. I see a path to 11-9. You've now narrowed that path a ton. And you're putting, you mentioned like, come back, let's see how it goes against Northwestern. Like you now have, again, I'm joking, like the non-negotiable, like you can't lose Northwestern at home. Like now you've made your path where it's like, all right, you have to beat Northwestern. You have to beat Minnesota. And that Ohio State game now is a huge game that it would be unbelievably helpful if you could pick up. Or that Michigan State game is probably a bridge too far based on where Michigan State is at. But it's like, can you get that? But you've given yourself very little outs, and you now don't have the ability, or you've not afforded yourself the ability to have a bad game or to have a bad night like you did at Minnesota, which the same team you're playing on March 4th at home. You can't do that. And maybe it's unfair to look at the Illinois-Purdue games, but the metrics were bad in those games. It's probably that USC game where it's like, damn, you had a chance there to pick up another win that would have given you, now you have a chance to stumble and still get to 10-10. It just worries me that for a team that has shown inability to be consistent outside of a couple of players, has a very tight rotation, has some issues offensively and defensively, you have a real narrow path, and you've given yourself basically no outs to get there. I mean,
the problem now for Indiana, and it was less of a problem, frankly, prior to yesterday when, Auburn picked up a big win and UCLA picked up a big win. And, like now you're getting into a spot where the fact that Indiana is they don't have any marquee wins, or they have a very small number. I'm not going to say they have none, but you look at where Indiana is at right now in terms of their tournament resume.
Thank God you win that game against Wisconsin in OT that
100%. Like, yeah. I don't think people realize how critical that game was, because that game, I mean, they've only got 4 wins against quad 1 and quad 2 opponents. And what's kept them afloat has been their metrics and the fact that they don't have any losses outside of tier 1, which is, I mean, that's helpful. The problem is Minnesota is like right on the hinge point of being a quad 1 or quad 2 loss.
And we could theoretically push them into quad 2 by beating them.
Absolutely. And so you've got 2 games coming up. You've got Northwestern, which will be a quad 3 win if you beat Northwestern. And then you've got Minnesota, which would be a quad 2 or quad 3 win if you beat them. You've got Ohio State, which would be a quad 1 win regardless, but do you trust Indiana to beat Ohio State? And then, of course, you've got Michigan State at home, which is a game you really need to win. Wouldn't hurt you too much if you lost. unless you lose the way
By
you
20.
lost.
Yeah.
Right. To Illinois and to Purdue.
Which is possible. I mean, you lost to them by almost 15 in the East Lansing.
And the problem right now for Indiana's tournament case is how much is the committee going to weigh big wins? The way that they did a seeding list of where they're at right now. And what was interesting about it was that there was a lot of debate about who was the fourth number 1 seed. Was it going to be UConn? Was it going to be Houston? No, it ends up being Iowa State. Well, why is that important? Well, it's because Iowa State, the argument for why Iowa State would be above Houston would be that Iowa State has more top wins. Both Iowa State and Houston have I think 16 or 17 wins against quad 1 and quad 2. Indiana's got 4. And if you look at the other teams that they're competing against, they are one of the few teams that has that few wins against quad 1 and quad 2. Right. Even St. Mary's, who has no quad 1 wins, has more combined quad 1 and quad 2 wins than Indiana does. They have 7, and Indiana has 4. So if you're Indiana, like you said, you've set yourself up to where you have such a narrow pathway, and it requires you absolutely have to beat Northwestern and Minnesota. You're going to have to win your first round game in the Big Ten tournament, which is going to be against a bad team, because you're going to be the 10 seed or the 9 seed, and you're going to have to play somebody that played on Tuesday. So you're not going to get anything out of that game. All that can do is hurt you. It is an unnecessarily tough spot for them to be in at this point, given metrics-wise, they should be a lot better than they actually are right now. And I'm worried, given how little resistance they showed in games against tougher competition, are they going to be able to flip it back on here over the course of this next couple of weeks? I think it's an open question at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the trouble too is, as you look at the Big Ten tournament as it stands now, let me pull up the where do I have that saved? Galen, where is it on my computer?
I do not have remote access to
No, you don't. I kind of need you to have. Here we go. The B-ball seeds. If you calculate the seeds now, that puts Indiana, if everything plays out, and this is with us losing, I think, to Michigan State and losing to Ohio State, it has us as the 9 seed, which, like you said, you're going to get a game against Oregon Northwestern, which really doesn't do anything. And then you're playing right now Iowa, although UCLA's been in that spot too, but you're playing Iowa, and it's like that becomes an important game. And then if you somehow win that, it's like now you're playing Michigan, and at that point you probably have done enough to get in. But my concern would be if you play Michigan and just get boat raced again, if you have another 20-25 point loss in that quarterfinal on Friday when all the committee is meeting, and it's like, if you're on that question line, it's like, man, Indiana's getting their ass kicked by Michigan. Like, let's look at this. Do they play well against good teams? Like, no, they don't. Like, it could be just a really bad optic, or you don't even get there, which is also a bad optic. Like that's what concerns me. Is it looks like they're going to have 2 kind of games that don't really matter but can only hurt them, and then a buzzsaw in the Big Ten tournament, which it just doesn't seem like that's going to be a good look for them no matter what they do.
Right. And that's a problem, because ultimately, and this is where these last 2 losses and the USC loss really dig into the argument that Indiana deserves to be in the tournament. And it's frustrating because this is just, unfortunately, incredibly familiar territory for Indiana. And it's like, outside of 2023, it feels like this has been the scenario every single year since the last year of the Crean era, where you are going into the Big Ten tournament with not great, basically everything has to go right in order for things to work out to get into the field. And we've seen several years where it hasn't worked out and Indiana didn't make the field. And then even the years that it did work out, or the one year it worked out, which was the 2022 season, Woodson's first year, it was by the
crazy run. Yeah.
It was the skin of their teeth. And then they end up, having to travel cross country after the play-in game, and they get obliterated, ironically, by 29 points to St. Mary's. It's just like, we keep coming back to this same point. We've just taken an entirely different route to get to that point, it feels like.
I know this will be the discussion point at the end of the season, but just a little bit to talk about it here. How important is making the tournament this first year for DeVries in your mind?
I think it's pretty important, and for a couple of reasons. A, you've got to, I think, have the proof of concept to provide to recruits that this is working and that it's pointed in the right direction. And I don't know how collapsing over the course of the last 3 weeks of the regular season, not making the tournament. I mean, at that point, what are you doing? Are you turning down the crown? Are you turning down the NIT again?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have, God, in what, 8 years, we'd have more turned down NITs than NCAA tournament berths.
And so I don't know that they do, but then now you're playing, and that isn't necessarily the worst thing. I mean, going to the crown, I mean, Nebraska, UCF, and Villanova were all in the crown last year, and they're all having real good seasons. So maybe that is a step. I just think, as important as it is on the recruiting trail to be able to demonstrate, like, hey, we know what we're doing, it's also very important for the fans that we look at the way that this team has been put together and we say there's something to build off of. And in a year when the bubble is terrible, like worse than last year, the fact that Indiana is in the mix is important. Not making it, given some of the other teams that are possibly going to make the tournament, and the fact that all you really needed to do was not get blown out in games against good competition, which should be something that's like a bare minimum for Indiana at this point. If you can't accomplish getting into the tournament at this point, I think that'd be a real blow to the general idea amongst fans that DeVries has this thing pointed in the right direction. And whether or not you want to say that that's important, I think it is important, because you are trying to fix a fracture that exists between the fan base and Indiana basketball. And this would be the wrong way to go about doing that, I guess, is my take-home point from all of these things.
No, I think the micro affects the macro here. And just like what happened the last 2 weeks and the last 2 games has really narrowed the path moving forward, I look at it similarly. If you do not make the tournament this year, it just adds more problems and more or not problems. It just adds more expectations to next season. And now, to me, it's like, this is always the thing with new coaches in basketball is like, if the first year, you make the tournament and it's like, you have this gradual step of like, tournament. And then we want to make the first weekend and then the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, like you kind of move those stair steps. You can't just say, first year coach, I want you to make the Final Four. Man, we only do that in football. But to me, it's like where I get frustrated is where, first year you don't make the tournament. It's like, all right, well, next year we're back to like, no, the stair step has moved. Like we're now on step 2. Like now I want to make the tournament and I'd like to be a protected seed and have a shot at the Sweet 16. Like just because you missed step 1 doesn't mean we all get to go to step 1 again next year. To me, and I think this was for a lot of fans, that the pressure will ramp up. And now it's like, all right, you can't just make the tournament next year. I mean, that becomes a non-negotiable. Now you got to do that and maybe a little more. And that is, we referenced that first Woodson year. That was something that was kind of a saving grace for Woodson, is that he made the tournament his first year. His next year, he seemingly got things pointed in the right direction.
Right.
But, Woodson probably still gets 4 years. But I do think everything is slightly changed if let's just say they lose to Illinois in the second round of that Big Ten tournament. I don't know if he makes the tournament. If they don't make the tournament, the NCAA tournament that year, I don't know what the pressure feels like with Woodson the next couple of years. And to your point on the recruiting trail, maybe Huchefino doesn't get here. I don't know the timelines. Maybe but it's like suddenly year 3, you're looking at Woodson. It's like, man, he's made the tournament 1 out of 3 years instead of 2 out of 3. So for DeVries, back to today, it's a huge deal because it really affects next season. It affects the pressure, and it just let's let a little bit of the air out of the kettle and not let this thing get boiling unnecessarily. But you only do that by making the tournament.
Well, and just to be clear, I'm not calling for anything. I mean, like this is not.
Was not.
People tend to conflate like, oh, you're saying this could be problematic. Are you saying that DeVries is in trouble if they don't make it? No, the idea is more the problem Indiana is going to run into is that this whole season was essentially predicated on having to do a complete roster turnover and a vision of a different type of roster, a different style of play. You and I talked about that a ton in the summer. about, okay, what direction is this going to take, and is it going to work? And, the thing about Indiana is that people really didn't like the style of play that Mike Woodson's teams were engaging in offensively. And, outside of 2023, they didn't finish inside the top 60 in offensive efficiency. Their defense was fine. It was top 53 out of the 4 years. It was just that 2024 season that was a problem. Like, Indiana right now, according to KenPom, is 38th in offensive efficiency and 55th in defensive efficiency. And that is coming from a period about 2 months ago when Indiana was like a top 25, top 30 defensive team. So the proof of concept of this roster and the idea of here's how we're going to build and here's what we're going to focus on, if what was done in the offseason, albeit on the fly, having to pull in a bunch of portal players, if you weren't able to get things taken care of this year with that approach, you're going to have to go back out and find more players to execute better whatever the original vision was. How excited are people going to be about that vision when what it yielded, if you don't make the tournament, was a team that not only didn't make the tournament, but let down as the season went along, which is essentially what happened not just during the Woodson era, but during the Archie Miller era as well. It's like the DNA didn't get changed. And I think that was the thing above all else that had to be demonstrated this year from Darian DeVries and his staff, was like, we changed the DNA of Indiana basketball. Yes, we weren't one of the elite teams, but we were clearly in that second tier. Right now, they just kind of feel like they're in that huge pool of teams that's barely hanging on to tournament hopes. And that's not really what you want going into this offseason, given how much people had already demonstrated that they were indifferent about what was going on with Indiana basketball.
Well, and the last thing I'll say, and it's not really fair because this is a tough thing to change, but the other thing that has been lingering in the Indiana basketball DNA is just we've been getting smoked in these games against good teams. That was always the thing, is like, we got to start playing them again. We didn't do that under Archie, then we did under Woodson. It's like, I remember the refrain. It's like, all right, at some point we got to win one of these. And right. You and I both saw us play UConn in New York and just got smoked. You went to the Auburn game down in Atlanta. You got smoked. It was like we just kept having these national stages and getting smoked. And it's tough to say, hey, full roster rebuild, and then you got to go play a bunch of tough teams in the Big Ten. But it feels like, to your point, that DNA is still there. Like, you play Louisville in Indy, completely smoked. You play Kentucky and you're not able to keep up. You end up losing by 12. At Michigan State, you're smoked. Last 2 weeks, Illinois, Purdue, just smoked. Like, this is becoming a trend. It's like, back to your original point, like, where is the heart to be like, hey, okay, we're not going to be able to beat Purdue and West Lafayette. We're not going to have it down by 30 at some point. So we're going to keep this competitive. We're not going to get our doors blown off. Where is that? Because that is unfortunately something that has become part of the DNA of Indiana basketball the last 12 or 15 years, is that for the most part, if we're playing a team in the top 10, we're not only going to lose, we're probably going to get our doors blown off.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the last thing I'll say for this whole season. Purdue's a very, very good offensive team. For the whole season, there had only been one other team that had allowed as efficient an offensive game for Purdue, and it was Eastern Illinois. Purdue beat Eastern Illinois 109-62, and Eastern Illinois allowed them to score over 1.5 per possession. Indiana allowed them to score almost 1.5 per possession, and Indiana allowed Purdue in this game to have their best effective field goal percentage of the entire season. That's what I'm saying. Like, that wears real thin real fast, even if you didn't know those numbers. The lack of competitiveness down the stretch from Indiana in this particular game. The Illinois game, look, games get away from you. You lose by 20. I get it. When you're playing your rival, that can't happen especially if your statement to fans at the beginning of the year was, this Indiana team may not be the most talented, but they're going to play so hard that that's the thing that you're going to remember. That was DeVries' own words. Like, that's the problem I have at this point. Not to say it's not fixable, but man, they got a lot to demonstrate to IU fans here in these last 4 games of the regular season, with 3 of them at home. I mean, this is where you have to come out and play at a level that makes people walk out of the arena and say, wow, they weren't great in those 2 road games, but they really responded. I think that's the stakes right now.
Yeah. Here's how you feel better to end this. that Eastern Illinois team this year is ranked 324th in KenPom. That's about what Fairleigh Dickinson was ranked when they beat Purdue as the number 1 seed in 2023. So there you go. That's
touche. Good stuff. I like it. All right. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. As always, a pleasure to talk to you folks. We'll have more podcasting coming up soon. I'll be back on Wednesday, and we'll have plenty of other podcasting on the Back Home Network. Scott, as always, a pleasure.
Good to see you, man.
For Scott Caulfield, I'm Galen Clavio. This is Crimson Cast. Be sure to tune in to Back Home Network programming throughout the week. We will catch you folks on the flip side. Stay never daunted. So long, everybody.
Hoosier Nation, want a smarter take on IU sports? Then check out Crimson Cast, your go-to podcast for Indiana football, basketball, and beyond. Hosts Galen Clavio and Scott Caulfield bring you game previews, instant reactions, history, and context to make Indiana sports come alive. From the biggest moments on the field to the storylines shaping the future, Crimson Cast keeps you informed and connected. And after years of saying bring back the Bison, IU actually did it. So if IU listens to Crimson Cast, maybe you should too. Just search Crimson Cast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube.